Welcome into OutKick the show. This is obviously not the show that I ever wanted to do. Hope that we would never have to do a show like this. Unfortunately, we've got awful news, and I imagine a lot of you have already heard it, but Charlie Kirk was assassinated, murdered in cold blood at the age of 31 years old in Utah earlier this afternoon. Happened... The shooting did right near the time, around 2:45 Eastern, right about time we were finishing the radio show. I was all set up to come on here and talk about college football and the NFL and the fact that we're in the middle of football season and how exciting that is. And let me just tell you a Charlie story that I think you'll appreciate if you are a big-time college football fan. I'm going to get into the particulars of why Charlie was so impactful and why I think he had such a dramatic and significant role in much of the success in our country with getting things back to some form of normalcy. I met Charlie in person right after Trump won the election. We've had Charlie on the show multiple times over the years. I've known him for years. In fact, I think the first time I met him was with Dave Rubin a decade ago. It feels like a long time ago, maybe 7-8 years ago, at George Washington University with one of his Turning Point events. But just about a week or 10 days after the election, it was at Mar-a-Lago, and I'm getting ready to go into Mar-a-Lago and see the president. And Charlie's there, as he often was, and he came up to me, and all he wanted to talk about was the Oregon Ducks. I don't know how many people know this. Charlie was a monster Oregon Ducks football fan. It was one of his great passions. And most of the time when we texted, it had nothing to do at all with politics. It had nothing to do at all with larger geopolitical events. It was all college football. And I remember when we talked in November, he was optimistic. He said, hey, I'm going to try to pull off the doubleheader. I want to go to the inauguration, and then I want to hop in a plane and go down to Atlanta if the Oregon Ducks are in the championship game. And I want to be able to do both in the same day. Obviously, Oregon lost to Ohio State. But for me and for a lot of you who are sports fans, you know innately when someone is a diehard sports fan like you are, because no matter what else is going on in life, people want to come up and they want to talk about their team, and they want to talk about what's going on with that team. And that is immediately what I was thinking about. In addition, we'll get into this, the family, the two kids, the massive influence, but I thought about that conversation that we had and the text that we have about college football. And in fact, I think the last time I texted with Charlie, it was saying, hey, you're doing a great job with this Turning Point USA, with all these events, in terms of influencing people. And I said, texting with him, have you thought about just overlapping the Turning Point USA tour to go to the biggest college football games on campus? And he was like, this amazing idea. He was so excited for the game between Penn State and Oregon. He was so excited to talk about the college football season. And when I saw this news, I also thought about the marketplace of ideas. I don't expect that you're going to agree with me on everything. You shouldn't. Charlie actually took the marketplace of ideas into the marketplace. All he did was set up a mic and say, let's debate. You tell me what you think, I'll tell you what I think. And when I saw the shooting happen this afternoon, my very first thought was they couldn't win arguments with him, so they tried to kill him. And that is the world that we are in now. And there is a profound evil and a profound sickness on the left in this country when it comes to not being able to handle opinions, ideas, arguments that make them uncomfortable. You saw it in Butler, Pennsylvania. You saw it in West Palm Beach with the president, 2 different assassination attempts. You have seen it at Minneapolis, and you have seen it at Nashville with 2 different Christian schools being shot up by trans people. The left believes that violence is the answer. Charlie believed that argument was the answer, that discussion, that debate, that the marketplace of ideas, which is ultimately, I think, the very foundation of America, that if we just have a full-bodied discussion surrounding every issue that goes on in America, ultimately, the better argument will win, and the country will advance in the direction of the better argument. And that's what happened, I believe, in 2024. And I think Charlie was particularly instrumental in making that happen. Because all he did was set up a mic and say, make better arguments than me. And they went viral, so many of these conversations, because he was illuminating the lack of substance of arguments very often from the left in this country. And all he did was let people tell him what they believed, and he would argue against them, and it went viral, particularly on TikTok, because there's a desperate craving for debate, discussion, and rigorous examination of so many different issues across the political spectrum. And that's particularly pronounced, I think, with young men. The reason why I think Charlie had such success connecting with young men was he particularly understood that young men were seeking answers, that young men were not actually toxic, that masculinity itself was not actually toxic. And I think that's why you've seen, I grapple with this a lot in the new book that I was writing, that's why you've seen so many young men going online, teenage boys. I've got 2 of them. They knew Charlie. They watched his videos. That's why you have seen so much of these arguments going viral, because people feel like inauthenticity is legion, and young people in particular feel like they're being lied to. And so I think that's what Charlie tapped into, why he was able to have such a profound impact. Let me read what President Trump said about Charlie, because I do think this is very significant. President Trump broke the news that Charlie Kirk, rest in peace, is no longer with us at the age of 31. Here's what President Trump said: "The great and even legendary Charlie Kirk is dead. No one understood or had the heart of the youth in the United States of America better than Charlie. He was loved and admired by all, especially me, and now he is no longer with us. Melania and my sympathies go out to his beautiful wife, Erica, and family. Charlie, we love you." He had a little boy, and he had a little girl. Some of you saw when he recently sat on the Fox and Friends couch, place that I was a few months ago, place that a lot of people over the years have sat. But Fox News shared a video of his little girl being so excited to run and give him a hug when he was on that television program during a break. And I think for any of us out there that are fortunate enough to be parents, this hits you in the heart. Whatever you think about Charlie Kirk, that little girl and that little boy are going to grow up without a dad because of a profound sickness in America. And the intent here, make no mistake about it, is to silence the arguments that Charlie Kirk was making. They want everybody to be afraid. They want fear to take over in the country where you and me and all of us out there that are willing to raise our voices to speak out for what we believe, that we're actually afraid to do it because we're afraid of what might happen to us. It takes a certain measure of bravery and courage to stand in front of a crowd and speak loudly what you know to be true. Most people are not willing to do it. The left is counting on the fact that most people are not willing to do it. They don't want to win debates. They want to kill the debaters that they disagree with. That's a very different position. Let me be clear here. There are lots of people out there variety of different political perspectives that I disagree with wholeheartedly. Violence is never and has never been the answer to win arguments with people you disagree with. Most of you out there who are Donald Trump supporters overwhelmingly agree with that. I've talked about my political philosophy. My number one commitment is to the marketplace of ideas and the First Amendment. Because without robust debate, we can't get to the best results in this country. Debate, disagree with people, argue with their opinions, do so vociferously, wholeheartedly. That's what America's founded on. But violence to silence your opponents, it can never work. In fact, everyone out there, myself included, I believe has to speak out louder than we were before, because it's what Charlie would have wanted. It's what I would have wanted. It's what President Trump would have wanted. It's what my radio show co-host Buck Sexton would have wanted. If you listen to us, this is impactful. It hits hard. We know Charlie. We do public events. This could have been any number of people that were targeted and killed here. I believe the killer is still at large. At least it was when I sat down to talk. I think I'm going to be on Sean Hannity's show later tonight reacting to this. But I just think in this time, if you are committed to free speech like I am committed to free speech, it reminds me a bit of the Charlie Hebdo situation that happened years ago in France, where people that are not committed to free speech, people that are committed to acts of violence when they disagree with the speech of whom they see as their political opponents, they try to kill. They try to snuff out. They try to erase the people who speak because they can't win in a debate. They can't win in the marketplace of ideas. That's what evil does. And there are consequences here, and I think they're significant and profound, and we should talk about them in earnest. When you describe your political opponents as Adolf Hitler, as Donald Trump has been for a decade, there are sick individuals who believe that, in fact, Trump is Hitler. There are people out there who believe that if Trump is Hitler, anything they would do to kill him is justified. In fact, I talked about this after Butler, Pennsylvania on July 13th, when I was so angry when Trump took that bullet to his ear and came within a fraction of a millimeter of also being assassinated like Charlie Kirk. I said at that point in time, you can't condemn the violence when you are calling someone Hitler. Because that assassin in West Palm Beach, I bet that assassin in Butler, Pennsylvania, who, by the way, we still know virtually nothing about, I guarantee you that they were motivated by the idea that Trump was a malignant, uniquely evil force and had to be killed in order for the country to be safe. You can't pivot from calling someone Adolf Hitler to then saying when violence arises against them, oh, I condemn all acts of violence. No. You have lit the fuse that led to the violence when you allege that Donald Trump or any of his supporters are the modern-day equivalents of Adolf Hitler. They are not. In fact, Trump, in the most recent days of his presidency, has pivoted towards trying to tamp down violence massively in the United States. The exact opposite of what someone committed to authoritarianism, ruling as a despot and trying to put his foot onto the throat of the American public would do. Truth matters. Facts matter in arguments. Charlie Kirk knew that better than anyone. He was uniquely skilled at it, and for that, they killed him. There are going to be a lot of people now who come out and say, oh, violence is never the answer, just like they did after Trump was nearly killed twice. They're lying. Many of their supporters take the lie and run with it. When you say that a leader is Hitler, when you say that a leader is modern-day Nazis, when you call Charlie Kirk Nazis, when you call President Trump an authoritarian fascist hell-bent on destroying the nation, some of your people take it seriously. We have a serious, truly catastrophic embrace of violence on the left in this country. This is not a two-way street. And so ultimately, there's a 31-year-old kid. I say kid because anybody younger than me, I know, consider to be a kid, getting to be an old man. He's got a little boy and he's got a little girl that will never hug their dad again, that will never have their dad read a bedtime story to them, that will never have their dad hold their hand, they walk into church, go to meet their teacher on the first day of school. They're going to be looking at the images of their dad, watching videos of their dad for the rest of their life, wondering, what would their life with their dad have been like? If you are fortunate enough to have a dad, have a mom that you've gotten to be raised by, if you're fortunate enough to have kids that you've gotten to raise like I have, just ask all of you to think about that. Democrat, Republican, Independent, I don't care what your politics are. We all got dads. We all got moms. Somebody took away those kids' dad. Somebody took away those kids' dad because they didn't like his political opinions, because they couldn't out-argue him. Think about that. That's evil. That's truly evil and sick. And if you are out there and you are gloating or you are tap dancing or you are celebrating in some way, you're wrong and you are evil. And some people get mad at me. They say, oh, Clay, I used to like you better when you just did the anonymous mailbag and you just made dick jokes. I looked around in the world and I couldn't stay quiet because I saw many things that were profoundly wrong. Charlie Kirk gave his life to stand up for what he believed in. The final words that he spoke were in a public forum where anybody could walk up to a mic and argue against him. The marketplace of ideas could not have truly been more wide open than on that day, this afternoon, and they killed him for it. I think the consequences are going to be far-reaching for this. I think, unfortunately, there are going to be far fewer public events. I think a lot of people are going to say outdoor events in public where anybody can walk up to are not safe anymore. I think the result is going to be, in many ways, unfortunately, less speech instead of more speech. I think we have to fight against that. I think we all have to speak out to the best of our ability. And I think not only do we have to speak out to the best of our ability, we have to understand that not everybody's going to agree. And there is no way to justify violence no matter what someone else's political opinion might be. And if you take that step, you are profoundly wrong. And not just are you profoundly wrong, you're evil, and you are going to be on the wrong side of history to the extent that you believe that you are on the right side of history. The group that has always tried to stifle speech and cancel and kill the people who speak out in ways that they do not like has always ended up on the wrong side of human history, which bends towards justice, free speech, basic human rights, and a robust and uninhibited marketplace of ideas. I want to close today by just saying, hug your kids. I'm going to finish this show, and I'm going to go downstairs, and I'm going to hug my 10-year-old. For a long time. And he's going to say, Dad, yuck. He's going to push me away. That's what 10-year-old boys do. They don't want dads to give them kisses. Yesterday morning, I've walked all my boys to school for a decade. The other morning, wasn't yesterday, it was a couple days ago. I was crossing the street, my 10-year-old, for a decade, your dad, your mom, you reach down, you hold your kid's hand, you cross the street. Do you want to take them from one side of the street to the other safely? My youngest is a 5th grader now. And when I reached down to hold his hand, he yanked his hand back. He said, "Dad, I'm old enough to cross the street on my own now." Charlie Kirk didn't live long enough to walk his kids across the street and have them tell him we're old enough to do it on our own. I want you to think about that. I want you to hug your boys and girls. If you don't have kids yet, call your moms or dads, because this is what moms and dads sit around worrying about all the time. I want you to say a prayer for Charlie and his family. And then tomorrow morning when you wake up, I want you to be brave, courageous, steadfast. And from the bottom of your soul, I want you to endeavor to speak truth in a world that often is unwilling to hear truth, as loudly, as consistently, as bravely, and as courageously as Charlie did. I think that's what he would want. And if by chance you happen to be a college football fan, I don't know the Oregon Ducks. I know that Charlie Kirk was a monster fan. And I hope on Saturday, when they kick off that game against Northwestern, you think for just a moment about Charlie and think about the larger universe of American life and where we have gone that anyone at all could believe the answer to speech we don't like is to kill the person speaking. God bless y'all. God bless Charlie Kirk and his family. And again, go hug those kids. That's where I'm going. I'll see you guys tomorrow.